So, hey everyone, today we have Anastacia Kurylo. Am I pronouncing that right, Kurylo?
You are, absolutely.
Yeah,
Kurylo.
I'm not that good with names, but yeah, we have Stacy today. She's basically the founder and CEO of Inform Your Community. This is part of the Founder Wisdom podcast. We're glad to have her today. Stacy, you may introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about Inform Your Community.
Sure, excellent. So my name's Anastacia, and I decided to found Inform Your Community because I was sick of having arguments with people on Facebook over political issues, and it was just too much. For years, that's what I did, and I decided I should use that time for a better purpose. And yep. So I founded Inform Your Community, and what we do is we basically we have fun events that we infuse with important information on any number of issues. So hopefully we can help other people avoid having those arguments on Facebook, or at least keep them better informed.
Yeah, that's good. I think we touched a little bit last time on our call about what is it with Facebook and people bullying or trolls, or like people just hating on Facebook. Do you have a hint or some data about why people love to get into arguments, why people love to put their anger on others or challenge others? Why is it that this is so popular, let's say, on Facebook? And is it only on Facebook or also on Twitter and other platforms?
Excellent question. So there is lots of research out there. It's not my area particularly. I have like 25 publications and 6 books, but that is not a topic I talk a lot about. But so my area is stereotypes, but in terms of social media, there is a lot out there that says, people have anonymity when they're on social media. People don't have the pressure of face-to-face communication. They don't have to feel guilty about what they're saying. So they feel more comfortable saying whatever they want. And although it is probably true of most social media, I think Facebook is a little unique in that there isn't as much anonymity. So you have the sense that you're talking to friends and people who should love and support you. But yet people also don't realize what they're posting on Facebook in particular. So they may forward something or say something that they don't even realize is politically charged. And so family members may feel more, well, I should help out with this. I should try to explain this. I'm surprised that they said this. So it's a little different from the other platforms. And then I would say in person, it's completely different, because I think in person, in some ways, it's the opposite. In person, people don't want to have arguments with each other.
Yep.
So face-to-face, research, shows that people want everything to be calm and, not cause trouble. And that's why when somebody says a stereotype, even if it's incredibly offensive, a lot of times people won't argue about it or say like, oh, I can't believe you said that. That's horrible. A lot of times in my research, people won't respond like that because they're trying to keep the peace. They don't want to cause trouble. They don't want to be a troublemaker. But on Facebook and other social media, they feel more comfortable.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And I think I have like a thesis for that. I mean, the Will Smith slap kind of relate to it. I mean, like when you're physically with someone, I mean, as primates and as humans, like you might be scared that this person actually beats you up, well, sure. Most, like in my case, I might have a discomfort, but, I do mixed martial arts. So I'm not really afraid of people, maybe a group of humans, but I'm still, I tend to avoid confrontation because, you never know if someone has a gun or a knife or that type of thing. VS with social media behind a screen, you're very much safe. You don't see the other person, and you're safe. You can say whatever you want without any repercussions. And like the Will Smith slap, it was very primal, but this is like who we are as humans. We get angry sometimes when people say stuff to us, and we lash out. By the way, do you have any thoughts on that, on what happened? Do you have any opinion on this this famous slap?
Way to put me on the spot, Charles.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're spot on when you said tribal. You know, we have this fight or flight response. So in face-to-face communication, generally speaking, we want to avoid conflict, and not just the kind of conflict that would cause a fight. Like, I don't go into conversations saying, you know, I don't want to have this discussion because I'm afraid you're going to punch me. Usually it's just, you don't want to be that person, right? You don't want to be the Karen, I think, you know, is one of the stereotypes. So, but I think with Will Smith, you know, maybe it was very primal. Yeah, I can see that. Sorry about the noise. But also, it's a very sensitive topic, and it's a topic that, you know, what I thought when it happened was, well, disability issues are going to get a lot more visibility now. You know, we're doing an event on invisible disabilities, and oftentimes disabilities, even ones that you can physically see, people who have disabilities don't have a voice. They get kind of pushed to the sides, marginalized. And I think, if nothing else, what this conversation, if you can call it that, between Will Smith and Chris Rock did is push that issue into everybody's faces. You know,
I also think from a psychological standpoint, you know, lots of people nowadays feel just pissed about everything, about COVID, obviously, and then this Putin stuff. You know, Putin was like the last drop in the full glass, you know, that made it overflow. And yeah, people are just angry nowadays, and this is all, they don't have a means to kind of canalize their energy and into something more positive and productive. And next thing you know, they get a silly joke from a random guy on stage, and I didn't know the guy. I'm pretty sure a bunch of people don't know him too. If I don't know him, I certainly know Will Smith and respect him. And yeah, he lashed out, and we all expect more from a guy like him. You know, a lot of people look up to him, and I think that we can push this back to society. And yeah, there's a bunch of angry people out there. And well, I mean, there's a couple of class of these people, because even I sometimes, when I'm on my Twitter and I see posts, you know, I'm just gonna tell my opinion. And sometimes when I look back at these comments, I was like, yeah, that there was some anger in there. And that's my main intention in that. Well, first, I still haven't, you know, like, did my mind on the topic, if it was a good thing or not to reply to people. I mean, there's the marketing side of it, you know, you can get more attention and stuff, and then there's the ethical part of it. But for sure, one of my goals is to battle test ideas, you know, and see if I'm right or if I'm wrong. And most of it, well, a good part of the time I'm wrong. And that's kind of my goal, you know, to get better information. And I think it's yours too, with Inform Your Community. So tell us a bit more about like what you do with Inform Your Community. And also, I guess this is part of the problem. Why people are so divided nowadays?
Sure. So I think this is where, I know this is an interest of yours, as I understand it, is, you know, this is where the media comes in, and you know, what sells, you know, advertising space is going to be things that make people upset or make people emotionally charged, because that makes them want to watch it. And so the media puts out on there that, you know, here's this extreme side of the issue, here's this extreme side of the issue, and they don't really want to show
for
what
marketing, right? For marketing dollars, for money. And yeah,
Absolutely.
that's a problem, but I still very much agree with the capitalist model. Anyway, go on.
Yes. Sure. I mean, that's valid. So actually what I was going to say is a lot of people blame the media for this kind of thing. And when I teach about, you know, my topic area, I start off by, you know, why do we have these stereotypes and so forth and so forth. And the students inevitably raise their hand and say, it's the media. And I explain, and listen, I teach an interpersonal communication class. I don't focus on the media. So what I basically say is, yeah, the media might be doing that, but they're doing it because it makes them money. That's literally their model, right? That's their business model, right? But why are we doing it? You know, why are we in our communication with each other? You'd be amazed at how many, maybe you wouldn't, at how many people I talk to. They're like, oh, the world's so, you know, the United States is so divided and everybody's, on one side or the other. There's no opinion, there's no issue that people don't have an opinion about, and you'll never change anybody's viewpoint about anything.
Yeah.
And I don't agree. I just don't agree. I think we talk about it like that with each other, and then we treat it like that's real, when in reality, I want to tell you a conversation I had. I just spoke to somebody on a very important issue. And one of the issues we focus on that's typically considered a kind of more democratic liberal issue. And I was trying to get some information on the topic, and I didn't know much about this person, but he started the conversation saying, just so you know, I'm a conservative. I voted for President Trump twice.
That's pretty rare.
I'm a redneck. And basically like really, explain to me who he was.
That's
so that
great. That's very good, actually. And that's very odd. You don't see that often.
You don't. And that was the first 5 minutes of the conversation. And I was like, oh gosh, what did I get myself into here? Because we're a nonpartisan organization. So is this going to be a fair treatment of this issue? And he spent the next 30 minutes talking about how this issue is unfair to minorities, and minorities should be treated better for this issue. We really have to improve it. I've spent my entire time since I've retired working on this issue to help us fix it. I know everybody involved in this issue, and we're really trying to get somewhere to improve it. And I'm thinking, well, that's not what I expected, right? So here's an issue that uniquely affects minorities. And here's this self-proclaimed redneck who's like, exactly. Yeah, I want to help the issue. So
that's not very conservative.
Right. And so I don't think we're as divided as we think we are. I think we talk about it because we're scared. This goes back to what we said before. We're scared of having conflict with people, and we want to avoid it. And since we can't predict if me and you talking, I can't predict just from looking at you what your opinions are going to be. So I'm not going to even talk about something that might be controversial because I don't want to cause trouble. And after all, the media says we're divided. So I guess we can't agree on anything. And that's my excuse for not having a conversation.
That's great. You just gave me like a boatload of questions and information in well, first thing first, I'm a futurist, technologist, capitalist. But I was about to say socialist. I'm zero socialist, but I want to do good. It's not the typical definition of socialist. It's like do good through technology. And anyway, these are. But yeah, that was me half joking here. Am I predictable? Well, mostly. You can check some of my opinions on Twitter and LinkedIn. And actually, well, LinkedIn is less opinion, it's more fact. Twitter is more opinions. And I write lots of controversial stuff in there. And like to come back to what I was saying, it's mostly to battle test ideas. I need feedback and opinions. And mostly I want to get it on paper to self-evaluate myself, in 5 years and say, oh, this is how I was thinking, yeah, my mind was still like fresh and young at that time. And I was lacking some data, but let's define a couple of words here. First thing first, what is divide? What is controversial? What is taboo? I think you used a word here. I have like cliche in mind, but a stereotype. I think stereotype. Can you define these words? Like I named a couple here, so like try to remember all of these.
Yeah, I know I'm going to miss a few. So controversial. Yeah. These days, most political or social issues are controversial in the United States. And the one that I've come across that isn't is food waste. Almost everybody I talk to is like, oh yeah, that's definitely something we should do something about, no matter what perspective they come from. But
like recycling and compost and stuff, or
and only buying what you'll actually eat, and not wasting food that could be somebody else could use, that kind of a thing. People seem very united about that issue, but controversial are things
Is
that people can't
controversial
agree
a
on.
synonym with taboo or with sensitive?
Oh, it's interesting. Yeah, now it is. Now it is. Because it's exactly related to what you just said. So you said you write on Twitter in part because you want feedback.
Yeah.
And that used to be the way things were. We would test out the ideas we have by having everyday conversations with people. And we would talk about topics on purpose because we wanted to see a different perspective. I remember doing that all the time, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, right? But those were controversial, but we didn't treat it like it was taboo or sensitive. Now, those things are kind of combined. So now controversial topics are sensitive topics. And so we avoid talking about them, which makes them taboo. So I would say now those are more merged. It's an excellent, I hadn't thought about it that way, but interesting point.
Because in the word like
great.
controversial, there's the word cont, and I consider myself a contrarian, and which is like to go the other way,
Right.
to go with like, there's the minority, and controversial to me is what a few people believe, right? Is it like the majority believes it, and then there's a minority of people, let's say abortion. I don't know the stats on abortion, how many are for it and how many are against it, but it's a controversial topic. What was the word con? It means to go against, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't know if the amount of people anymore is really a defining, I think it used to be. I don't think it is anymore, because now what you'd find if you did search it, what no doubt you would find is that the topics that are treated as controversial are often centrist topics that on social issues that most people agree on.
Okay.
But they're represented in the extreme ways so that they sound controversial, and the people who have the vocal opinions about them, they end up talking more, and so it sounds controversial.
Yeah, I think it's like, hey, we sit down to make this decision like 50, 100 years ago. We don't want to sit down again to change that one. We're comfortable, don't want to change it a bit like same-sex marriage. And to us right now, it only makes sense, right? Or Black people's right, like it just makes sense nowadays to give all of these people their rights, and well, I don't really like the word rights because it refers to a law, but dignity probably, and freedom's a good one. And I think people just didn't want to change things, and they were in their comfort zone. Is that a good way to put it?
Yeah, I think the extreme of saying comfort zone is talking about privilege and invisible privilege, and so in some ways it's very similar. So comfort zone could just be like conversationally, it's not my comfort zone to talk about this topic or to be argumentative. Clearly you and I don't have that problem, but for other folks, it's not in their comfort zone to engage in these kinds of conversations. But I think also part of it is there's a privilege associated with that, because if it doesn't affect you personally, you don't have to talk about it. You can go through your entire life and never talk about an issue. And that's a privilege, right? So at the extreme, it's, we could call it comfort zone, but I think
survival,
it also
because a bunch of people acquire beliefs that are part of their identity. And when you attack that, it's like, you put in jeopardy my future. I took the time to think about these things, and I forged myself, this is who I am, and you're not going to tell me who I am, and you're not going to change me. I have full control and full freedom over my body and my thoughts, and you're not going to change that. So I think people need to loosen up a little bit, open their mind, and understand that changing themselves first is not that hard. And like also just approaching it, you don't even need to change. It's just like talking it out, and having that openness and not being that close. For example, sometimes, I said the word Black people today. I'm not even sure if that's the right word to use. And this is BS in my opinion. I should be able to kind of, I don't have ill intentions when talking about Black people. So why am I feeling uncomfortable to to not
Right.
use the right word to describe, a person with his skin color, which is black, an Afro-American. I think a lot of people kind of, and maybe the closed up people, and I think it's a generalized phenomenon in our society. It kind of closes the conversation or makes people uncomfortable, not using the right words. Do you have any thoughts on this topic?
Sure. And by the way, we're right in the wheelhouse of what Inform Your Community does right now, right?
Yeah.
So we're trying to educate people on, the very basics, like literally this idea of, so like, what is the appropriate word to use to refer to somebody who might otherwise be called Black or African American? What is the right word to use? Like, that's great. That's something we would have as part of our curriculum for one of our events. Basic level, you don't have to have a partisan opinion on it. It's just, well, what are the appropriate terminologies? But for anything, right? Transgender, anything, any topic. But part of that is being open to hear that conversation. And more importantly, in some ways than knowing what the right term is understanding what the implications are of the terms that we choose to use. So, you get something as controversial as, Black Lives Matter, and then there's Blue Lives Matter, and then there's All Lives Matter. And so, okay, at the surface, those are just different, we can argue they're just different political movements, political perspectives, and maybe you use the term that most fits what you believe in, but it's still kind of important to understand what the other terms mean, right? Because by implication, if you're using one, you're aligning yourself politically a certain way. And you should really be aware that you're doing that, right? So we want to I've recently taken to calling what we do pre-partisan. We provide pre-partisan information. Like, before you even get into what side of this discussion you're on, let's just talk about like what a word means, really basic information.
Well, I think it's just scary a little bit for me, like an educated person, that I'm still not using these right words. And if I can't use it and I'm like the 1%, what will the 99% do? The redneck, will he use the right words to describe a Black person? And that to me is like just closing the whole conversation with like most of the population. And I think that's directly related to the divide here. People closing out discussions and the means of communications, which is like why we're here today, as a society. It's communications. It's me telling, oh, there's a gazelle here, or there's a lion there. So
I can speak to that. So there, I think it goes more to what is the appearance of a divide than an actual divide. Because we might think that, well, most people, if I get into a conversation, are going to be upset if I use that word. My guess, whatever that word is, right, for any group, I actually don't think that's the case. I think you can probably say Black, you can probably say African American, and probably most people really won't care that much. Even those who are Black or African American probably won't care that much which one you pick. But there are going to be extremes that do. And, and ultimately, you're not necessarily going to appease the extremes, nor should you necessarily want to appease the extremes. Right.
Correct.
So it's okay. The extremes can exist, and that's fine. But the reality is, most people, I really sincerely don't think. I think they want you to understand and be open to the fact that it might be not the right term, or ask questions about it so you find out. And I think that's what most people would want for whatever group they represent. But I don't really think that people are like, oh, that's it, never talking to him again. He used the word Black. He's off the list.
Exactly.
I don't think that's the case.
Statistically, do you think there is really a divide? Like, have we quizzed the American population and found out that one couldn't talk with another? Because that's my definition of a divide. It's pretty much like, well, I mean, they have social media lives as well, but now they can't talk to their neighbors without being frustrated. you know, and it's funny because some people kind of shield themselves and say, yeah, I don't do politics, you know. I often hear that, but I think like not doing politics is even worse than doing
Absolutely.
politics. It's like, yeah, putting your head in the sand, you know, like an ostrich, if they do that. I'm not sure if that metaphor is right, but do you think there's a real divide in the American society?
I love what you just said. I want to give a moment to that. Just say, yeah, I think not talking about it is worse than talking about it. That's my like college professor background in me, like trying to get my students to open up, engage in the topic. Like you can't learn if you're not willing to make mistakes or possibly say the wrong thing. Like you kind of have to have conversations, but they shouldn't.
You need to start somewhere.
You have to start somewhere, right? But they shouldn't be like heated and people shouldn't jump down your throat immediately and things like that, right? So and that's the kind of safe space we try to give, is that space where you can just be here and learn. As far as the divide goes, this is I'm gonna tell you this, and I think it will blow your mind, but we'll see.
Okay. Yeah.
To say that we're divided assumes that that every issue I care about, you and I are not going to agree on. Like there's a lot of issues I care about.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that some of those you and I probably agree on.
Yeah.
I'll also tell you something else. There's a lot of issues I really don't care that much about. Like I kind of don't.
Yeah.
So to say that, let's say, for example, you and I are divided, right? Hey, I run a nonprofit, right? Capitalist is not, I'm working for free full time. That is very not capitalist, right? So you and I may not agree on the capitalist part, you know, at least in our own practices.
Yeah.
But it sounds like we agree on a lot of other stuff.
Yeah.
So what are we, when we say like the country's divided, there's an about what? Like what are we all like, I'm pro-choice, you're anti-choice, and we'll never talk to each other? But what about the 100 other issues that we can have a conversation about that we might agree on? So I'd say it's a myth. I think there are issues that more people are divided on. But I think, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, I was teaching in class about centrism and using statistics that showed on major issues, social welfare issues in particular, quality of life issues in particular, people were more united. So I really do think this divide is, if I have to, I'd call it a myth that we accidentally promote because we're now just fearful of putting ourselves out there and having that conversation.
What sets the stage for a healthy debate? And is that the kind of debate we see on TV with politicians running for the White House?
Healthy debate, eh? That is a great question. So we actually have one of our issues we cover is productive discourse. We literally have it as an issue that is important in the United States, productive discourse. And so we wrote our curriculum about it. And that's really what you're talking about. Like, how do you have productive discourse? How do you have these discussions? Yeah, and so for we do events around this issue, and for in our curriculum we talk about how like being open-minded, obviously. Okay. Also being empathetic, being willing to make mistakes, being willing to ask questions, being respectful, being thankful that somebody's willing to give you time. Nice. Or really just basic things. Imagine, if you knew you were going to have a conversation, if you were going to meet a stranger and I said, you're going to have to talk about, and I picked the most controversial topics that you personally find difficult to talk about. And I said, but I can guarantee you that the person behind that wall that you're going to talk to has these qualities. Okay. Wouldn't that make you feel so much better? Right?
Yes, like, especially if qualities/values that we share. Yeah, that would be great. And I think, that what's not outrageous, but so obvious to me is that this is not what we've been taught. Society has taught us to debate to win. And that's the whole problem, no?
Yeah, It's interesting though. I'm going to think about that some more.
Because yeah,
Because
like when I speak, I mean, you know, like me, if we just dive in my history real quick here, you know, I was this argumentative kid, huge ego. I always wanted to win. The every single argument that I would get into, I wanted to win. And guess what? That led me to thinking that I would be a great lawyer. I would have probably been, thank God that I didn't choose that profession. But that is rampant. That is the disease to me in our society, is that we always need to win. There needs to be a winner, there needs to be a loser. The loser will be punished, the winner will be praised. And if only we would attack, you know, attack's probably not the right word, but start conversations with the mindset to learn and to listen. And yeah, empathy to me means, you know, putting myself in your shoes and trying to see Charles, you know, on this other side of the camera, and me doing the same with you. That and understanding that we are one on so many levels, scientific levels and stuff. One organism, you know, like there's, you know, it's like these astronauts going to space and looking at planet Earth and coming back to Earth and feeling a different way, that we are all one, and you know, we need to care about this planet and stuff. But I think that's the fundamental problem in here. And well, coming back to capitalist system, which is the system we're in, capitalism most of the time, well, not most of the time, I think there's a lot of win-win too, but a lot of times it's win-lose, right? Wall Street, I trade something, someone has to lose at the other end of this trade for me to win. And yeah, we and that's laws of evolution again, you know, if I kill this opponent, I will reproduce myself more, and I will get more females and stuff, and more resources. And yeah, I think that's deeply ingrained in us. But competition, I think, can be good. So I think there can be a healthy little dose of competition here in debates, try to push the other. But I think the main goal of a debate should be more to learn than to win, because at the end of the day, it's very hard to get the real facts, you know, which is another topic, you know, like where do people get their facts nowadays, and how can we give people better facts than, you know, just the fact check thing and saying that Trump 70% of what he says is not factual.
Yes, I think it's you know, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, the internet, like you looked up something and you were like, oh, okay, this is what it means. Okay, fine. I don't think that is the internet of today or of the future.
Google is very bad at giving facts. And is there such a thing as a fact? Well, probably according to science, but I mean, yeah, like give me a bit more info here.
So, we're you know what, Charles, you and I can talk for hours. So
let's take like 10 minutes more if you have them. I still have 10 minutes.
Okay, yes. So in terms of information out there and trying to know what's fact versus not fact, I think it's ambitious to try to use the internet for that purpose. I think that's you know, you have to already have a PhD in order to be able to look at the internet and find information, see, and try to distinguish between fact and fiction. I had written a blog once about, you know, some conservative site had actually a mainstream newspaper had said that minorities get extra points on the on the SATs. And I was like, I just know that's not true. And I had heard it in a few places, and I was like, I'm going to look this up. So here I am, PhD. At that time, I had 3 books published. I'd been teaching for 10 years. And it took me an hour to get at the truth behind that statistic, which, of course, was not what was being reported about that statistic. Black people don't get bonus points on SATs, and minorities don't get bonus points. But it took so long to trace to the article to find the right one. It's ridiculous. So like you were saying, the 1% versus the 99%, how are most people who don't have PhDs, or how are you going to go out there and find out what's fact or fiction? And so I think what happens is, since you can't look on that on the internet, easily. You go in with your bias and you get out what your bias supports as fact.
Yes. And this is a fundamental problem.
This is a very, very bad thing. So even more why, and we've been really getting such positive feedback on what we're doing, and folks like you are interested in what we're doing, is we kind of cut through all of that and just say, here are some just fundamental things, indisputable things.
Yeah.
And what we do in our curriculum, because the idea of what's indisputable is also kind of, well, what does that mean, right? What we do is we give statistics, some basic statistics, some basic definitions, some basic timeline events, some basic people who are kind of icons in the area that we're talking about in that issue, and a few other things. And if you're the kind of person who likes statistics, then that's what you're going to be drawn to in our curriculum. If you're the kind of person who wants to know, I just want to know what this means, you'll be drawn to that. And so what we really mean is that we give information that everybody will be receptive to hearing.
Okay. And that is digestible too. The UX part of it is very important, yes. You know, and I mean, we could get so deep into it, you know, because in the end, it's all, you know, like, or neurons firing on some directions. I think a lot in terms of percentage, but even this is funny, you know. I imagine, you know, a circle, and how many percent of that circle is, and what does 50-50 means and stuff like that. Well, I guess it's just like more than the other half, if it's 2/3 vs 1/3. And also some topics that fascinate me are how studies are conducted nowadays. You know, I think that is due for some type of change, but I think that the low-hanging fruit right now is some kind of platform, obviously better than Google search. And yeah, there's DuckDuckGo out there, but even that, you know, it's not super nice. And DuckDuckGo's goal is privacy. It's not like factual data. We would kind of need some search engine that would give us factual data. And this is one like of the potential startups that I want to start. Google tried their hand at it, Google Scholar. But I mean, Google Scholar, it just gives you the link to scientific articles that are not understandable. Like, scientists need to get down their little clouds, you know, and explain their findings to the society. And yeah, because they're so disconnected, you know, they're in their little world. Yeah, their brain is full of data, but can you share that to people and make it more accessible? And yeah, I think this is one of the top thing that I will be working on, I think, in the next few years, kind of having a tool that will give you factual information. Because when I put like, I don't know, for example, you know, I started sparring again and I have a deviated septum, and it took me like 2 to 3 years, 2 to 3 weeks to find out, even as a smart person, that this is what I had. I saw a doctor. The doctor was incompetent. In Mexico, unfortunately, there's a lot of incompetent doctors. And then I went to see another one. And yeah, when I search on Google, the first results are like healthline.com. And if you go see and you dig a little bit in what healthline.com is, it's like a glorified online CNN, you know. It's a media conglomerate owned by individuals that want to make money. It's SEO'd, so like search engine optimized, and the results is shit, basically. You know, it tells me to do this and that, but it's not very good information. And Google still positions that as number one. And the Google guys are pretty smart. I'm pretty sure they thought about this. So I think I'll have a lot of work on my plate. But what do you think about what I just said? Does society need a better tool to obtain like more digestible information?
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, my nonprofit aside, we can only do so much. Having a tool is really what you need. And in addition, you know, but it's you know, Facebook is doing this thing now. Is doing this thing now where it's
Google, like Facebook.
Two
floors under.
But to their credit, for what it's worth, they're doing this thing where they say like, this is not fact checked, or this is questionable. I forget what they call it.
Yeah.
They put a little label on it. And I actually appreciate that, because I've posted a few things where people have caught me saying, I mean, this is when I was arguing on Facebook, and I posted something and people caught me only happened once or twice, to be fair, but people caught me like posting this thing, and then I'd look at it and go, oh, they're right. So even for me, sometimes I don't have the time to search, for hours to make sure that it's a legitimate source. So even for me, it helps if I see that. I go, okay, let me look into this more, and I'll look into it and be like, oh wow, I almost forwarded this. I'm glad that was there. So it's certainly not as much as social media and online sources can do, but it definitely raises awareness.
And it's always funny to see like technology versus humans, because theoretically, technology could give us very impartial information, but at the end, it's not what we would want to hear. And because of the identity thing, I am this, and this goes against what I am, so I'm not going to believe it. And Zuckerberg, I mean, genius of a guy, probably did think about this. And yes, you're right. I think Facebook did improve since 2016 elections. I think they've been doing a better job at informing the public of things. But these algorithms, in the end, they give you more of what you want for you to stay on the platform and interact more. Google a bit less, just because we use it all the time, or maybe still, maybe they brainwashed me so much that I'm saying this, but I think it would be interesting, some kind of tool that we would be put out there and that would give you information that's been scientifically validated, whatever that means, because as I mentioned, I think the scientific methods need to be reworked on, and same for pharma. Drugs that show that the placebo work 7% of the time and the actual drug work 10% of the time. So that's a reason to market the drug, right? 3% difference. Okay, but I'm putting this new thing in my body, and then all these new chemical reactions. Very scary.
I was going to say
Purdue Pharma and all of that, like the addiction and the states, the opioid epidemic and stuff. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was going to mention that with the idea of the platform that you're talking about, it goes to this idea of capitalism, and when you have a for-profit entity, especially let's say one that's that large, that's publicly traded, your responsibility is to your stockholders, right? And so you have to have sales, you have to improve.
Well, if I have investors, I'm like radically independent, so it would be just Charles. And again, that makes it good in some ways, but also bad.
Yeah, I don't.
But if I have good investors, then that can be interesting.
But the other thing I was going to say about that is that it's on people to also not buy into the sensation, because then if you're in that situation, and great if you won't be, if you are in that situation, then your job is literally to pander to what will make people watch you. Again, back to that's the business model. So it's on people to also be more, critical thinkers, and if we teach students in school more what critical thinking is, and I think they do some schools do a lot better job of doing that. But on the other hand, there's lots of places who are not doing that. They really don't necessarily want critical thinking to be something that kids are learning in school, because that means they'll challenge authority and and things like that. So really having critical thinking, media analysis tools, media criticism tools that people are raised with, taught in schools and taught in their families, and they know how to interpret information. That
super important.
That will help, because then they'll be more equipped to stop the biases from making them eat up the forgive me, BS that sometimes the media throws at us.
Yeah, that's so good. I have like one last tangent and then one last question, so we can wrap this up. And it's related to what you just said. It's funny sometimes because we look at our parents, for example, and what they see on the news is like facts for them, COVID. Yes. And then they, oh my God, COVID, I'm going to die. Next thing they die. Because, their mind convinced them that, this shit is dangerous, but it's not. Well, it is for people a certain age, or the opposite, like, oh, I don't need a vaccine. I'm obese, and I have all these health problems, and no, COVID is fine. It's COVID is very dangerous for you in that case, and so is a cold, and so is you of dying a heart attack and stuff. But one thing I was gonna mention is that on the other end of that is students, and you've obviously dealt with students. I think students can be, I think we need everyone in the society, to be honest. We need extremes, we need students, we need these people, because they can be useful to the whole ecosystem in some other ways. But sometimes I see students as well that are so fresh, and they go into communism, and they go into here in Oaxaca, Mexico, you see some of that, the red star, I think they call it, or whatever, which is communism, the cycle. And I mean, you're I think you're of Russian origins, or these countries, so you might have an interesting opinion on that. And feminism, but extreme feminism, it's like kill all men and stuff like that. I think, yeah, and sometimes it's weird, For example, here they paint all the walls with these graffitis saying this and that, and I think it's very uneducated. I think it's just like, yeah, okay, you want to tell a message, okay, well, you have a different ways of doing it than painting the walls, and polluting everyone's life with your ideologies. And yeah, you probably need a bit more experience in your life, probably start a business or something, and get a real sense of this world. What do you think of what I just said? And do you think there's a way, do you think it's just normal because I had that at university, I studied political science as well. And, there was these hipsters, communists, and I just think they don't understand the world, the true reality of the world. And that's another funny topic. But what do you think about what I just said? And do you think there's a way that, for example, students can get more data in their brains? And do you think it's just a phase that they go in their life and it's normal? What do you think?
So yes to both of those. So it certainly, I don't know, okay. So I would assume that if we looked it up, we would find that there's a phase in life when we're, into these kinds of things, and we're, rebels and things like that.
Yeah. It's anger, right? It's like, I'm trapped, I'm in my room all day long. Yeah. I want to get away from my parents, and now I have this magical ideology that's going to save me.
Right. And so yes, in that sense. I also think it's just part of human nature, which means it's not something that we'll age out of, in that we prefer our in-groups. So what we do is we create a kind of closed system where we're surround ourselves with people who are like us. It could be like us in skin color, it could be like us in ideology, it could be like us and we're in the same part of town, or whatever our in-group is, the people who are like us. We surround ourselves by them, and we assume to some extent, and maybe it's true to some extent, that they think like us. And so we create this closed system in which we're hearing the echoes of what we're saying, as if it's we're saying it and somebody says it back to us, and so it must be true, and because that's what I said, and then you said it right back to me.
It's like in a cave. You're in a cave,
exactly. It's a great metaphor. And so we're surrounded by people who are saying the same things as us. And I would say to anybody out there who watches this, or who's thinking about these issues, the solution is to go outside of that system, to go outside of that loop into an environment. It's like what you said you do on Twitter. It's like, I'll say something because I want to test that idea and see what people
say. To be honest, I'm in my own cave in Twitter. I have like 20 followers, and I think I have one guy that keeps liking, but I hope my team will get me through more to a broader public, and then I'll start receiving hate. But continue what you're saying.
So that's it. We surround ourselves, let's say that's a perfect metaphor too, by the 20 people on Twitter who are liking what we say, or the 50 people on Facebook, or the whatever, and you kind of have to, it was very strange for me when I talked to that gentleman who was like, I'm a conservative and I voted for Trump twice. Granted, he said he did this. He said, I voted for Trump twice holding my nose, is what he said. But he said, so I was like, what's about to happen in this conversation? I have to say, I was a little nervous. And by the way, I'm rarely nervous, so that was really unique. But I was a little.
I wrote about that yesterday. Like, I like interviewing people that make me nervous, I have a guy that I think I'm going to interview tomorrow or today. And yeah, he kind of makes me nervous. So that's a good sign.
And that's it. So discomfort, it's like when you learn, maybe your parents teach you guitar when you're younger, or you learn ballet, or you're going to try out for a sport. Everybody knows going out on a limb there is a good thing. Nobody's saying like, oh no, stay in your comfort zone. Definitely don't learn a new sport. Definitely don't try ballet, right?
Yeah.
And to do that, it's necessary. You have to put yourself in that comfort, out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
So we need to do that conversationally. And I would say, if you notice that the people around you are agreeing with you all the time, surround yourself with new people.
Yeah, there's a problem. Like a lot of successful entrepreneurs, they say like, surround yourself, like you are the results of the 5 people that you spend the most time with, or something like that.
Right.
And then the next thing, we surround ourselves with people very similar to us, and they have similar ideas and values, and next thing you know, and I mean that leads directly to my next topic, which is communities, and the future of like society. So these entrepreneurs, for example, they surround themselves with other entrepreneurs, maybe some entrepreneurs that make a bit more, but still it's very similar people. Right. I'm more Joe Rogan in my opinion of things, which is to talk to a bunch of different people and get these data points to crack like global problem. Because last time I checked, even though I want to have my colony on other planets and other stars, I still live in society, and I still walk in the street with other humans. I still walk on these same streets, breathe the same air. So until then, like I'll need to think broadly, although I don't like to, I think of the mass as the herd, and most of the time I want to kind of isolate myself too with like other successful entrepreneurs, let's say, but I don't think that's a solution. But I do think that this is the future of our society. I think it's people, like starting their own little countries and having these Bitcoin communities, and this island and this Aconville in Africa, that, and like all these little communities of similar minded people. I think this is where the world is congregating, and I think it's good, because I didn't choose to be Canadian, and be with Canadians. And although I do identify myself with some values from there, but I identify myself more as an entrepreneur foremost, and I would want to go in a community with entrepreneurs. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to get out of this zone frequently enough to get various opinions and grow my neurons, and have better opinions, and most likely help like these less favored communities. But do you think this is the future of society, communities, and you agree with what I just said?
Yeah, I'm wrapping my head around it. That's another one I may have to think about some more. I think, as long as we're not getting into the surrounding those communities could then become surrounding yourself with like-minded people. And then we're just, right back where we are. We're just in a different location, right? Maybe it's Facebook instead of in person, or it's, Zimbabwe instead of Mexico, or, something. But, it's ultimately seek out information that's counter to what you believe to be true. And in science, they call it, being falsifiable. What you're saying has to be able to be falsified. You have to be able to find that information out in the world, and with some basis for it being real or true or agreed upon in some way, that is outside of just your, researchers. One of the good things researchers do is they put their work out there in public forums, right?
Yeah. Well, that's a funny thing with bipolarity and like quantum physics. There will never be something that's 100% true. It will be like 90% true or 95% true, but it will never be 100%. And Yeah, I just think that division is like part of our DNA and evolutions, like being in tribes. That doesn't mean that, like one tribe cannot help the other and these tribes can cooperate. But I think that the country model, and I think it's just ridiculous to think also from an evolutionary perspective, which is like probably 80% of my philosophy, Darwinism, that, 330 uh, 330 million people would get along together, which is the population of the United States. Heck, I forgot the theory of well, that theory, but it states that, a tribe at max might be 300 human beings. And our society might have evolved to, let's say, 1,000 or even 2,000, but I think, to expect for everyone to get along too is also, I mean, we can get along and we can have respectful conversations, and to be in a tribe doesn't mean like to declare war on the other, although if we look at history, it very much is that way. But I think that we can have win-wins and we can have dialogues, but I really think this is the future, and when we talk about space colonization, for example, and Elon going on Mars, I think his philosophy, I'm not sure if you watched a documentary on Netflix, but he sent like 4 very different human beings. I think that was more on where did he send him? Oh yeah, just in space. But they were like four very different human beings from all parts of society. But I think that was a marketing move. I think in reality it's gonna be only rich entrepreneurs going on Mars mostly, and I think that's the future. And is it a bad thing, knowing that like wars can happen at times? But yeah, again, there's us labeling some people bad, terrorists, jihad, and and good. That's another thing in our brain. This is like a fascinating conversation. I'm growing brain neurons by the second. But do you think this is the future?
I think so. Typically speaking, I plant myself firmly in the present, which is probably also why I'm more on the nonprofit
I'm like
side
80% of the time in the future, by the way, and I used to be 99% of the future. So thanks to my meditation practice, I still have the small 20% in the present.
We'll have to talk more, so I can help ground you in the present, and you can bring me into the future, and we'll have more conversations. I know I have another call I have to get to, but I'm enjoying this conversation so much, Charles. Really appreciate
same here.
it.
I love talking. I love battle testing ideas. Thank you, Stacy. This has been amazing, and hopefully we'll do another one of these.
Would love it. Would love it. Thank you so
Talk
much.
soon. Bye.